Hello, 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 everyone. It's Sara Spiker here, and today I have a special guest, a personal friend, Bruce Lefkowitz. Did I pronounce it strong or did I butcher your last name?
Close enough. Lefkowitz. I never did anything.
It's so funny because usually I get the same question with Spiker, because like teacher, speaker, all sorts of things. So Bruce and I met 15 years ago through my basketball coach, and him and his wife, actually your whole family, are one of the most amazing, kind, generous people that I know, and it's such an honor to have you here today.
Well, no, thank you. I can't believe it's 15 years ago. To see you grow a young lady into a mother and professional has really been exciting to watch and be a part of.
Well, the same with your kids. When we came over for the Thanksgiving, they were just little ones. They're not little ones anymore.
That's it.
So for those of you who don't know, the reason why I'm so honored to have Bruce here today is because he brings to the table over 30 years of experience when it comes to sales and management. And we're not talking about just small businesses, but we're talking about some big corporations. At one point, you managed staff of more than 400 across the states with a portfolio of $3.8 billion in sales. And I'm curious, our conversation, I hope, is going to go into many different directions that the audience can really take away some of the insights of how to deal with the current reality, and especially how to build this vision so that they can anchor this big vision as they're repositioning, pivoting, adjusting. But before we go there, I want to ask you, where are you right now in your life, with your own business, personally?
As you said, I was lucky enough to have an incredible corporate career, 30 years at blue chip companies like Turner and Discovery, and most recently the last 17 years with Fox in the ad sales business. And, I like to say that I never worked a day in my life. I was lucky enough to also never really work with anyone I didn't like. And that's a blessing. I talk to young kids, I talk to people, and, there's a difference between a job and a career. I was lucky enough early on to find a career in ad sales. And when Disney bought Fox, it was an opportunity that I was lucky enough to receive one of the buyouts, which, after 30 years, very, very lucky and enjoying my post-corporate life. I'm not sure if I use the word retired because I did open a consulting business and I have 3 or 4 clients. And what's great about being in the consulting side of the things is, number one, I have a filter, and that filter is it has to be fun, interesting, and no assholes. So, and no commute and no corporate and no bosses. But anyhow, that gives you a filter to go out and meet a lot of people and make decisions on your own. So I'm really, really enjoying it. I'm working with the Big 3 basketball league with Jeff Quatnitz and Ice Cube in their sponsorship sales. Working with the Spirits Network, which is a really interesting OTT e-commerce play with Nick Buzzle as the CEO. And it's just been really, really interesting. A different perspective when you're not in the game in a time of crisis like this.
Exactly. So what is it you're seeing? Because you just started a business right before all of this happened. So you got to experience the past and current. What are some of the shifts that you're seeing with your own clients that are taking, some of the concerns that they're having, some of the solutions they're looking for?
Well, I think, the biggest thing in the advice in any times like this, and this is unprecedented, so nobody can really give you advice and say, hey, post 9/11 we did this, or 2008 we did this. I was managing at both of those periods of time, and I think the biggest thing is to breathe. Take a step back and realize, every contract in the world has the word force majeure in it, which is unexpected, cataclysmic circumstances, and that's what this is. I think companies have been, very responsible for realizing it. And I think that as a leader, that's what you have to do. First, take a breath. Second, take care of your people. That is the single most important thing to make sure that people realize that you understand that this is not about business.
Yes.
Families, there are people that are important to them, whether they're affected directly or not by COVID. I think it's important that we say to people, take care of what you need to do first. Business is a far secondary thought. And there's a difference between saying it and meaning it. And
Yeah.
people know who means it.
Yeah.
You know, there's a difference between, hi, Sarah, how's your family? By the way, did you get the call into that, you know, person? So I think that that's really important. And that once you know, take that breath, take care of your people, check in with them, reassure them, then you start thinking about, okay, what is the plan?
Mhm.
And that also comes into managing expectations.
Yeah.
What is realistic today? How is that reality going to change tomorrow? Because we don't know what tomorrow's numbers are going to bring or anything like that. So I think that, you know, that's sort of the 3-step process that I'd look at.
Mhm. When it comes to, you know, a lot of companies especially are shifting, including my husband's, right? Things that just a couple of years ago was, it cannot be done. Now it's being done, including working remotely. As somebody who has managed teams literally remotely from New York to Detroit to Chicago to LA, what are some of the best practices that you can, like you said, take care of your people, make sure that they feel heard, supported, understood, respected, while still keeping an eye on the interests of your business?
I think, you know, number one is communication. And, you know, the fact that we can be talking on Zoom right now and you can see someone, it's a lot different than a phone call. But in
Yeah.
the absence of a phone call, I think the most important thing is communicating with people.
Mhm.
And I think when you have a one-on-one interpersonal conversation with video, people make their own judgment about, you know, hey, does he look calm, cool, collected? Is he panicked? Is he, you know, what really is the messaging behind the body language? So I think that's particularly important. And I think you touched on something else that's going to be really interesting. You know, out of crises, things evolve. And I think in the business world, you're going to see a number of things, you know, again, this whole concept of work for home. You know, I remember that when I started in sales, you know, we had sales call quota and call reports and had to prove to people. And the idea was you should always be out of the office because you should always be on a sales call, you know. And the idea is, you know, if salespeople were sitting behind their desks, as one of my old managers said, behind those big paperweights, computers back then, I think that's going to change because I think people are going to see that as long as the productivity is there with work from home, and look, it is not the same as being in an office with 400 people where you are walking around, talking, engaging, all of those type things. But it does give people some freedom, you know, depending upon their personal situation or their family situation. And I think that that's almost an unintended consequence of this. And it's one of those things that I've always characterized as non-monetary benefits. If you ask employees, you know, what is it that you want? I want money. I want a bigger bonus. I want a bigger salary. I want a title. Okay. But we can't do that. What are the things? And I think, you know, a lot of it starts with respect and a relationship from your manager. But as you go down the line, I think one of them is going to be, hey, work from home might be a really good thing for me at this point in my life. And the fact that you trust me enough to offer this is a benefit. And I think a lot of businesses will be able to do that. Again, going back to my own business, you know, I was in sales for many years and I'm a big believer in the face call. You know, I think that's really important and irreplaceable. However, even before the COVID, I found myself becoming the master of Dropbox, where, you know, you put it up on Dropbox and you open it and we can go through it in different places. And I think that's just a natural business evolution.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that you really touched upon, how it's really close to your heart, is managing both worlds, the professional and the personal. And I would only imagine throughout your career, you have seen many people come through the door only to leave either burnt out or totally disconnected or their personal lives ruined. Um, in the meantime, from the outside looking, you know, and seeing you and Coco raise 6 amazing kids, what are some of your insights when it comes to managing both and really embracing both? Because one thing is say, I have a big family that I'm supporting. Another thing is to really be present with them and to be at the games and to show up for them. And um,
Look, you know, I think the first thing you have to realize is everyone is wired different and everyone is different. I'm no better or worse of a parent or a manager because of where my priorities were. But, you know, one of the things was right from the beginning, I let anyone know that is my priority. My priority is not to become the president. My priority is to become the best father, husband, and friend that I can be. And, you know, balancing a career with that, it comes down to choices. There were career opportunities, there were promotions, there were transfers that may have been really exciting. And by the way, that many people would have taken, that I didn't, you know, that I may have danced and I may have spoken to, but at the end of the day, I said, how is this going to compromise my number one thing? And, you know, you mentioned a word which I think is important. I think it's the most important thing in business and in family life, and it's presence. And it's not Presents. It's Prescnce. My spelling's good. And it's being there. And again, if you go back and you were to say to me 30 years in your career and this, that, what's your greatest accomplishment? You know, I said it the other day to someone, 314 varsity basketball games. And that to me, being able to make them, I had a role model. You know, my father, when I was coming up and playing in high school and in college, and I didn't really understand it. He was an accountant at a Big 8 accounting firm, a partner. He had a real job, unlike, you know, sometimes the fun of my job. But I just took it for granted that he was there every game. I played 105 high school games and 100 games in college all around the country and the world. And he missed 5. And I just assumed that's the way it is for everybody. And of course, as I got older and gained my responsibilities, I realized that that's a privilege that's earned through performance. And that most businesses, including, you know, mine in particular in sales, we're results-oriented business. And if you're putting up the results, then I don't care if you can do your job 3 days a week, you know. And not only did I talk the talk, I walked the walk. I mean, again, people who worked for me saw me leaving to go to a 4 o'clock game, to go to the kids', you know, Christmas pageant or the concert or whatever. And I expected them to do the same thing. And, you know, a couple of times a year, I would make a bold statement. For example, I always said that Halloween was a parent's holiday, and that I expected every parent to stay home and spend the day at Halloween going to their kids' school and getting an early start on trick or treat. And for those who didn't have kids, take another day as your own personal day. But I really believe that presence is important. And I think it's a choice. And again, everyone makes different choices, and you can't make any choices for anyone else. But then it also comes down to results. If you're not putting up the numbers, I worked for wonderful, supportive bosses who understood, you know, and it's managing their expectations. And particularly in this day and age of, you know, electronics and communications and technology, if my office can't function without me from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, I've got bigger problems, is the way I always looked at it. Particularly because on the train up, I'm available. At halftime, I can look at something, and I'm just using sports as an example. But I really believe that made me a better, more empathetic executive, because I always said to people, we all have lives outside of this place. Whatever it is you're in, horseback riding, raising your kids and all, my job, you're not impressing me if you work every night till 8:30. As a matter of fact, I think if you're working every night till 8:30, there's a problem. Either we're the problem or you're the problem. Are you not understanding something? You know, do you have too much on your plate? And I think that's something that, again, I tried to live by.
There's so many different directions that this conversation can go. But first, I want to say thank you for sharing this. And I hope the audience really hears this, because at the end of the day, success, you know, there's so many definitions to success. Personally, what I really stand for, also in working with my clients, and they say, no, I want this type of business, I want these results. Like, my first question to them is, what kind of life do you want to live? It's not mutually exclusive, and it needs to be multidimensional. One of the things that you mentioned is basketball. For those of you who don't know, Bruce is a Hall of Famer of University of Pennsylvania, among other accomplishments. How has that played into your life? Because there's something that athletes have that cannot even be described sometimes, but so many others don't. And it can either serve you really well, or it can nearly kill you after you're done.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and sometimes it comes off as trite, to say teamwork, competition, but those really are the hallmarks of success in any business. How do you work with other people? How do you relate with other people? And, are you competitive? Do you want to win? I always say that, the reason I found a career that was perfect for my skill set was when you finish playing ball, they do take that ball away from you at some point. Some people are lucky enough to play in college. Some people are lucky enough to play, at the next level. Very, very few. But they take that ball away. And how do you replace that excitement, that Jones of playing in front of, 7,000 people, as I was lucky enough to do, or winning? And for me, sales was the perfect career because it's very analogous to sports. You won or you lost. You made your goal or you didn't make your goal. Just like no one wants to hear, we lost, but I scored 30. Because so what? You lost. Same thing is nobody wants to hear, well, I didn't, make my budget this year because Pepsi screwed me or AT&T didn't do this or that. So I think there's a certain accountability that comes with athletes. I also think that as much as there's an ego, which is a good thing, and a competitive zeal, I think there's also a sense that, look at the man in the mirror. I'm a big fan of the poem, The Man in the Mirror. I'm almost every sales man in the glass. Of every, sales meeting that I had, we use that in some way, shape, or form, because the essence of it is, look, you can fool everybody, your parents, your bosses, your this, your that. But the one person you can't fool is the face staring back at you in the glass in the mirror. And I think that athletes in particular, they know when someone's a better player than them. They know when it's time to quit. It's hard to admit, but I think they do. And I think that sense of reality allows them to manage expectations. So for me, it's obviously been a vital part. And again, teamwork, competition, all of those things. You are what your record says you are. Most businesses are results oriented, are numbers based. And there are always, excuses and reasons, but at the end of the day, what do those numbers say?
Exactly. Yeah. At the end of the day, also you can have either an excuse or you can have a result. You can have both.
And I think, again, as a manager, one thing that's really important to understand is, we're not going to win every game.
Yeah.
You don't win every game. As I used to say to people, I'm a Met fan, but the Yankees, if you don't want to play for the Yankees, who have 27, championships, then this might not be the right organization for you. And in baseball, if you fail, strike out 7 times out of 10, you go to the Hall of Fame if you're a 300 hitter, right? So in business, it's the same thing. You're not going to hit a home run every time you get up to the plate. And management needs to realize that and manage it and give people the appropriate roles and understand their skill sets. I played for my high school coach who I was very close with. And he said, you know what? I'm never going to ask you to do something you can't do. But what I am going to ask you to do is do the things you can do really, really, really well. So if you're not a shooter from the outside, we're going to give you layups. If you're not, if you're a great rebounder, that's what I need you to do. And it's sort of the idea of knowing your role and knowing your strengths and weaknesses.
How does it play into those who might not be looking for a position or are not in a position within a corporation where the roles are kind of defined, but like yourself, you transitioned into business ownership, into entrepreneurship, where you have no choice but to start mastering other skills?
Well, I think, again, I think a lot of that is trial and error, right? Because when you have to do it all yourself and you don't have the benefits of a big corporation behind you to go to that specialist. But the other thing that I think is really important is knowing where to go and ask questions. Don't be too proud to ask questions. I think, listen, sometimes in corporate America, people don't want to ask questions because it's a sign of weakness. There's, the boss thinks I should know that. I shouldn't let them know that. So I think that it's, how do I get the information to move the business forward? And again, I think when you're an entrepreneur and when you own your own business, you have to make those decisions. And, nowhere is it more appropriate, the man in the glass, than for an entrepreneur or your own business. Because at the end of the day, you're looking at yourself in the mirror every day. There is no one else to blame.
Exactly. Radical responsibility.
Yes, like that fancy term. MBA term.
yeah, you know, it's kind of funny because my personal experience, right, was this high performer athlete. And you said, you know, when they take the ball away from you, how do you replace it? For me, it was amazing because it was diving right into a career, right into entrepreneurship, right into motherhood. So everything was just piling up. And then I remember the second one was born, and the person staring back at me was like, "Who the hell are you?" Everything
Sure.
came crumbling down, and this radical responsibility for me was not just accountable to the goals and to upholding the promises and commitments, but allowing to peel back the layers and all the stories and expectations that I put onto myself through, you know, cultural programming, generational expectations, family
Hmm.
expectations. So at one point, it's not just it becomes a mental game. So again, this perseverance, the toughness, the resilience and resourcefulness that a lot of times can translate from athletic career. Is it something in your experience you have learned that people can also learn? Let's say somebody does not have athletic background, and we're talking about athletics because both of you and I are coming from athletic background. But sometimes you have to build this tough skin. You have to build the resilience. You have to learn how to function. Especially right now, I think a lot of people are put to the tests of all the tests. Um, what are some of your, what would your advice be to those people as well as the management? And I know we spoke a little bit about it in the beginning, but is there something else that is coming up that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's all about processing information. And
Mhm.
in order to process information, you have to know how to go out and get information. And, you know, I look back at my career and it's interesting. You know, my greatest strength is one of my greatest weaknesses. And that was the ability to quickly, you know, process information, distill it, and make a decision. Because I never wanted to keep someone else waiting, like, oh, the boss, management, this and that. So I'd rather make a decision quick
Mhm.
and maybe not, you know, be right than the. And I think that was a weakness. I think it was a strength in that people always knew that I was accessible and all of that. But again, it comes down to decision making is all about the information gathering process, how you distill it, and then have the courage of your convictions to make a decision and stand by it.
Yeah.
And I think particularly now in this environment where information, there's new information every hour, every day. So the decisions you make, you know, are going to change over time. And I think, you know, you can't be afraid to make decisions based on the information you have now. And
Yeah.
if that means that a week from now it was the wrong decision, you stand up, you raise your hand, and you say, look, based on the information I had then and there. So it's this you know, consistent search for
Mhm.
information. You know, I also think I was always inherently curious. You know, I like to ask questions. I like to think about things. And that doesn't have anything to do with athletics, to your point.
Yeah.
And I think people who are inherently curious and are not afraid to ask questions ultimately go further in their career.
Mhm.
You know, if you're curious and you take accountability.
Yeah.
So,
Let's pivot a little bit. I hope you don't mind. A lot of businesses right now are in this crunch almost. Things are changing, the clientele is changing, the priorities are changing, their needs are changing. Um, Sales is still happening. What are some of the processes, even if you want to call it that way, of adjusting what is that you're offering?
mhm.
Maybe you just have to reposition yourself on the market. Maybe you have to pivot completely. How do you know the distinction?
Well, I think two things. I think the first most important thing is checking your tone and
Mhm.
realizing that your tone has to be different in this climate than others. But inherently, it doesn't change to me the fundamental of sales. The number one, so if you're a buyer and I'm a seller, when I walk in, you have a big yellow sticky in the middle of your forehead and it says, how can you make me look smart to my boss? So that is to me the essence of sales. If you
Mhm.
can make me look smart to my boss, I got time for you. And if I'm the buyer and I got money for you. But if you can't make me look smart to my boss, if you waste my time, if all you're worried about is what you need to achieve, you know, I don't have time for you. So I think that now really is the time to say, how can I help people achieve their objectives? And in order to help them achieve their objectives, you need to ask. You need to know. You need to say, what is it that you're facing? Is it your distribution supply chain that's a problem? You know, is it stimulating interest? Is it marketing? Is it this? And where can I help? And by the way, I may not be able to help.
Yeah,
I may not be able. And I'll use a great example. You know, I'm working with the Big Three, which is professional 3-on-3 basketball. It's really exciting. And, you know, obviously there are a lot of issues concerning professional sports and contact. And, you know, our season was supposed to start June 20th through August 29th. And myself and a gentleman who I have working with me, you know, they hired my firm to, you know, handle sponsorships. And we were out and we were making all these things and the balloon was just starting to lift. And now COVID comes in. I feel like the air is out of the balloon, right? So as a business, the first thing that Jeff and Ice Cube did is they said, look, you know, we're going to pivot. We're not going to go to 10 markets. We're going to build a stage in LA and we're going to have 6 of them there and we'll test the competitors. So at least we can, you know, have something in our, you know, season. Then from there, we're pitching an idea now, which is Big Brother, Big Three. So the idea is a preseason tournament to fill a void in the entertainment and the competitive sports landscape that gives people an outlet. Well, so now we have this product, which we think is good for people, but how is that good for advertisers? And for which advertisers? You know, if you're a, you know, quick service restaurant, is that a good environment for you? Or if you're an insurance company, you know, what are the companies that are still out there? How can we help people get their message? If you're Taco Bell and we deliver, well, great. This might be a great environment for it. So I think it's really important to, again, realize what the benefit you can bring to them before what they can do for you, and make sure that you're not tone deaf. You know, again, if we're talking to a Verizon, if we're talking to a Geico Insurance, if we're talking to these companies, they got a lot more important things to worry about than buying 4 commercials on a Saturday afternoon in a Big Three basketball game. So understand where you fit in that food chain, but realize that you may have value for some and you may not have value for others.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up. I think it's really important right now, like you said, to understand where you bring value and focus on the value, because I'm noticing there's so many people who are taking themselves out of the equation, believing that it will be completely tone deaf to offer their expertise, offer their services in this climate when people need them. Mm-hmm. So with that said, what are some of the ways that your Six-Pack Media, I know you share this example right now, but what are some of the other ways that your clients, corporations, businesses can come to you right now when they have sales problem, when they have management issues? What is that you do for them, and what is the process you take them through?
Well, again, I think, you know, and there's another client that I have in mind who I spoke to last week, and they're looking for guidance. They're looking for experience. They're looking for parallels. You know, they do want to hear, how was it after post 9/11? How was it? You know, experience is a really valuable teacher. You know, there aren't that many gray-haired folks in the executive suites anymore because everyone wants younger and better. But they've never really been through it. So I think, you know, they want to know. And again, my first thing is, have you taken care of your people? Mm-hmm. Have you taken care of your management? Meaning, have you managed the expectations? You know, no one wants to be the bearer of bad news. Everyone wants seashells and balloons. But the reality is, in this uncertainty, in this unprecedented uncertainty, there really is nothing to draw from. So you have to have a reasonable expectation and opinion on what that is. And the value that I'm able is to say, look, I'm not in the game. I'm not, you know, responsible for driving the revenue. But here's the deal. You're not going to see money from these categories in the next few months. Mm-hmm. And if those categories represent a large percentage of your business, you better go tell your management, because there is no way of getting back to it. Again, there's a perception out there. Wow, the Olympics was canceled. The NBA might be canceled. So there's going to be a lot of sports money out there. Well, no, it doesn't really work like that. but you have to have the credibility to be able to tell people that. And I think that's really key. Again, it goes to garnering information, processing, distilling the information, and then communicating it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, being able to have an opinion and being able to say, I don't know.
Yes.
That's okay. It is okay to say, I don't know. If a client says to mine, so do you think the upfront, which is the television, business buying season, is going to happen this year? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in those conversations. By the way, even the people who are in those conversations, takes a buyer and a seller, and they all need to be together. But I don't know. But here's what I think could happen, one of these scenarios. And if it's scenario A, what do you do? Scenario B and scenario C, what do you do? You don't lose anything by preparing for multiple scenarios.
Yeah. This is so valuable. Thank you, Bruce, so much for sharing all of this.
No,
here.
my pleasure. It's fun.
Is there anything else that you feel that needs to be, if you could stand at the top of the skyscrapers in New York City and shout it out loud that people need to hear, what would it be?
Well, I think it goes back to one of the things we didn't talk about before, but it's management. Whether you're an entrepreneur or whether you're in a corporate, you have people working for you. And it's a lesson that I've learned being the father of quadruplets and twins. And that is, every person is different. And if you're given the responsibility of management or running your own business, you're ultimately the authority. It's your responsibility to find out what makes each of them tick.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always say, treat them 100% totally exactly differently, because they're all different.
Yeah.
But if you don't take the time to understand what makes your employees tick and what motivates them and what is that's driving them, I think you lose the opportunity to really engender loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So to me, I think that's probably a really important lesson is, everybody's different, but it's up to you. If you want to be a boss in a position, and you have that servant leadership responsibility.
So this really would be definition of an intentional leadership almost.
Mm-hmm.
Setting intention.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And there's going to be a link for the audience, biography that I'll be sharing and link to your website. So if anybody has any questions,
please feel free to reach out. I've been very lucky. And, again, for me to be able to share, my experience, my wisdom, whether it's business or personal, again, probably prouder than anything that I've brought about 50 people into the media business, including some of your old teammates. And I was very, very lucky. And, a guy named Joe Cohen did it for me many years ago. And we're still very close. 40 years later, I was an intern. So if I can pay it forward, I'd love to. So thank you. And everybody stay safe and healthy out there.
Thank you.